Hello, everybody. It is July 23rd, 2026. This is Radio Free Nintendo, episode 985. With me today, Guillaume Bayet.
So professional.
Right? This is what I bring. Greg Leahy.
Ahoy, everyone.
And who isn't with us tonight is James Jones. He has other plans, could not make it tonight. However, I did get a text from him. I will let this be interpreted as the audience may. I'll have to kind of maybe translate it a little bit. I'll read it. It goes as such. Yo bitches, with a Z. Lots of anything pluralized in this. There were Z's at the end. Yo bitches, screw da podcast. I'ma go live large. Peace, suckers. And there's multiple Z's at the end of that. So that was what James sent to us this morning. Yeah, I don't really know how to interpret that. I could take offense to it, but
I mean, like he
I don't know.
He texted you personally. He also texted me. I gotta say, like he's got a very different texting style when he's addressing me, I guess.
Yeah.
A few fewer Z's.
Okay. Yeah, he was quite, the thing is, what I appreciate is I know exactly where he stands. You know, he's very, really lets you know. Good communicator, James Jones. Once you get past the multiple Z's. All right. So, we will kick it off with new business as we tend to do. Greg, what do you have for us?
Yes, well, I guess I've got something very current with Splatoon Raiders, having come out just over 24 hours before we record this, so not a lot of time to spend with it, but read the reviews this week, and seemed appealing on particularly one score in terms of a couple of games lately. With Rhythm Heaven Groove and Mina, the Hollower, where it's kind of like, they sound appealing, or certainly the case of Rhythm Heaven, it's very appealing because I played so many of the other games in the series and enjoyed them so much. But it's not the easiest always to actually kind of dedicate the proper attention to those because, they expect a certain amount of you. Don't always have the great conditions for that. So, the thing about Splatoon Raiders that definitely sounded appealing to me is, on the one hand, it's heavily rooted in Salmon Run, that mode from Splatoon 2 and 3, which I have played and, kind of enjoyed. But by kind of making it more into a single player thing, I mean, you can, team up with friends or ask for help from random players on the internet, I think, as well. But kind of primarily, or at least at the foundation, it's kind of a single player take, using a lot of those, kind of bosses and enemies and, to a certain degree scenarios. Like, there's bits of it that are more directly kind of Salmon Run than others, but basically, to be able to kind of have that as an experience that you could enjoy, even if at times, I don't know, if my tiredness catches up to me or my attention span catches up to me and I screw it up. Well, it's not like screwing everyone's game up if he was actually playing a Salmon Run in Splatoon 3 online. It's there might be anonymous players that you're not voice chatting with. So they're not going to be, hurling abuse at you or anything. But still, you don't want to mess people's Salmon Runs up by being rubbish or inattentive. Yeah.
And also, they can't screw your run up either.
Also a fair point, yeah. I mean, it's not... the thing is, Salmon Run can be so crazy, it's not necessarily always clear, how it goes wrong. It's just, it is one of those things where it's everything's under control, you're killing the boss salmonids as they appear and getting the eggs, commensurate with that. And then it's I'm sure this comparison's been made, more than a few times with these sorts of games, right? It's kind of like your falling block puzzler, right? When it goes wrong and it's just the trash blocks just start filling up the column so fast. And it was this was fine 30 seconds ago. How did this happen? And it may be that one person just completely screwed it up. You don't know a lot of the time, but still. I'd certainly prefer not to be on the hook for something like that. So, yeah, this kind of offers that kind of action in a setting where you can enjoy it more casually and, not be and get something out of it without being like 100% locked in all the time. So that's kind of, from reading the reviews and obviously my experience with the relevant mode and everything, that's kind of, what it sounded like. That seemed like, yeah, this could be right game at the right time in that sense. Something that'd be quite useful to me at the moment. I can enjoy in that kind of capacity, and just in the very limited amount of time I've been able to spend with it so far, it seems fairly promising in that regard. Like I said, you've seen plenty of familiar enemies from Salmon Run, but it kind of feels like you've got a little bit of a mix of like certain amount of like level design that is kind of familiar from earlier Splatoon kind of single player efforts, just sort of populated with some of these elements from Salmon Run, and then other moments where it's like, okay, you got these kind of dungeon type areas that they can refer to, where you are more under time pressure, right? It's like, okay, you've got to be able to amass a certain amount of eggs from killing salmonids in time to be able to kind of escape to the next level of the dungeon by you've always got this kind of partner character in like a little weird little mech thing, and they, if you get enough eggs to power them, they drill down literally into another level of this sort of subterranean dungeon. So yeah, that point, it does feel very Salmon Run-ish, because that you're always kind of up against it in the real Salmon Run, right, online. You've got to be killing stuff fast enough, because if you don't, you won't get enough eggs, and there'll just be so many the bosses, like the trash blocks, in the falling puzzle scenario that I outlined, it just builds up so fast no one could cope, and you're overwhelmed, overrun, that's it. So here it's a little bit different, but it's the same principle, right? In the end, of just like, these things spawning out of places, you've got to be able to kill them fast enough to be able to kind of move on. So you get in a fair amount of that kind of same feel here. I guess what's going to be interesting over the length of it, that obviously in this period of time not being able to really kind of observe in very much detail yet, is this idea of, growing your character and building the character over time with the loot and all these different kind of like almost skill trees, and adding, buffs onto your equipment and stuff. Like, there's all this is in there, which of course is very different from like regular Salmon Run. It's very much just like, oh, hey, you go in there, you get a randomly assigned weapon, and you've just got to deal with it, right? It's all about spontaneity kind of thing. Whereas here, you've got, I guess, the ability over time to kind of craft your loadouts, maybe have different ones for different situations and stuff. And, presumably, that will be one of the ways in which it offers, by using the same kind of basic elements as the foundation, it'll offer a different kind of experience, because you get to kind of meaningfully feel like, you get better, more effective in certain regards by the loot you get and what you choose to sort of spend skill points and various other things to enhance your stuff. So that
what are the skills like? Is it sort of like, I want to make a shotgun build, so I have a short range skill?
Well, you got, if so far, it kind of feels like which weapons you get in does still have quite a significant like random element to it, in terms of, I'm not sure it's necessarily giving me specific weapons at specific times. It is just like you get, loot, and it could be one of various different types. I've got a lot of the kind of basic splatter shot types, but some blasters, a roller, just a few different ones. So there's definitely going to be like a luck element into it, but also then it's like, okay, you can choose to enhance certain weapons just like by level. So presumably just increasing the basic damage and stuff. And that, costs some of the main currency that you get. So again, it's going to be a case of like, okay, what weapons are like worth investing in? I guess so. Some of it's kind of random, but then there's this other aspect that's up to your agency. And then you've got these secondary kind of abilities as well that they talk about. The terminology I'm not au fait with yet, just in this period of time. There's certain things called gadgets, that's for sure. But yeah, these are like kind of additional like moves you can do in the middle of things if you've got on a kind of cooldown. So like there's one that I found pretty useful so far where you kind of do this kind of leap across the sort of playing field so you can get behind things. That can be really tricky because that's quite a lot of Salmon Run a lot of the time is like, you know, you kind of fending things off, and the sort of swarm is accumulating, and then it's like, it can be really tricky. So you need to make sure that you've got like an escape route to get behind things, and certain salmonids, you know, they're armoured up front, right, and you need to be able to get behind them to be able to hit their weakness. And with this, you can just sort of vault over stuff, do this splashdown, be a big explosion of ink, kills a bunch of things, but also gets you behind the thing, and then you can just sort of, you know, pump them full of ink until they die after that. So that's a cool move, and again, that can be quite granularly enhanced, it would seem. It's like you can increase the damage it does, you can increase the radius of the splash, you know, when it happens, and then you've got other aspects of it I can't remember that can be upgraded, and that's just one of several of these like secondary attacks that you can use. So it does seem like they're going to be offering, you know, quite an array of different things over time for you to kind of tweak to your liking. How much that really kind of engages you, I guess, is yet to be seen. But that's, you know, one of the kind of key ways, I guess, in which you're really adapting this into a persistent, like, single player kind of formula and campaign. So we'll have to see, yeah, what that really does add over time. Yeah. But, you know, kind of seems like, interesting so far.
Yeah, like, do you think it carries over into, like, the kind of swarm mode or time trial mode, I guess you could say?
Yeah, I don't.
Is that the ultimate end game goal?
I guess, yeah, that's the thing, is that it's like there's different kind of there's ones like you kind of go to your little mech thing, and it's got like a map on it with the different missions you can pick, and some of them are sort of more off the beaten path, but they're like kind of like pure, like, you know, kind of time trial ones. You just got to kill enough stuff in enough time to be able to get the treasure or whatever. So yeah, straight away, it kind of, yeah, I think you could probably feel the need to, like, yeah, if I could just sort of enhance that particular weapon's damage, it's just going to burn through the salmon it's faster, and then that's going to be more achievable. Whereas like the more kind of standard levels have got a more relaxed pace, and it's just kind of like, okay, you're doing some environmental navigation for a bit, right? So got light platforming elements. Which, yeah, this has a kind of interesting thing, because again, you've got your sort of buddy character in the mech, and you can kind of call them to a certain position and then like do a jump off them, and they boost you up into the air. And then, yeah, like I said, they use that in platforming. But again, that can be useful in combat when you want to kind of get over like a whole bunch of them. If they're, you know, kind of forming a barrier around the salmonids, you can just kind of vault over them with that and kind of get a more advantageous position. And your buddy kind of tanks for you a little bit, you know, it'll divert attention away from you, you know, so you can kind of tell it to go a particular, you know, say stick there, and then kind of move around and target everyone else. So yeah, it's kind of, you know, obviously if you've got that background in Salmon Run, you've already got a lot of the kind of tactics down for especially, you know, these familiar enemies and stuff, but you kind of will be doing it in different ways as well, because, you know, it's not a 4-man squad all the time, it's you and this kind of AI buddy and stuff. So yeah, it's you know, it seems solid enough so far, but a lot of the big questions about how much you can, you know, lasting appeal you can really get out of this, you know, are yet to be answered. I think it's going to come down to how satisfying is that character growth kind of thing, because it's a little bit different than, you know, what you've had in Splatoon before. You know, a lot of Splatoon, it's like, okay, yeah, you've got your gear, and, you know, people grind, you know, to get the gear with like the most advantageous buffs or whatever, but there's only so high it can go, like however many hours you put into it. Like you've just got like you sort of a basic kind of like strengths to the gear, and then like the 3 like kind of sub abilities that it's got that kind of help, you know, give a certain buff or whatever. But that's it, you know, it's not like a real character growth thing. So that's what I'm kind of interested in seeing how well it plays out.
Yeah. Now this does have a story where you uncover the map and everything, right?
Oh yeah, sure. No, it's got a campaign with the, you know, like I said, you kind of just go to the map and you know, it gives you your choice of various things that you've kind of uncovered to go, and it's got like a number like for how intense that particular kind of mission is to give you an idea, so you could try something maybe a little bit ahead of schedule, see how well you could do it, probably especially if you could maybe tackle it with like allies, or, you know, kind of phone in a ringer off the internet or something, you know, like maybe it would be easier. I'm not sure how they scale that kind of stuff. But you kind of get fair warning about what you're going up against. So obviously, yeah, if you could do something, you know, that's a higher intensity a little early, you might get some, you know, rewards that would be commensurately kind of better, I guess, and therefore maybe give you a leg up, you know, elsewhere. But presumably it's going to be pretty hard to do that. I've just been playing on the middle difficulty so far. I think I forget what they call the more difficult one, but yeah, probably given the more casual nature around playing this at the moment, it seemed like it would have been overkill. I've never been that good at Splatoon, that's for sure. Yeah.
Can you do online co-op?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. No, you with friends, and I think there's local as well. I don't think there's game share through game chat, which like for instance, they just added that to Mario Tennis Fever. Which, you know, so I don't know if that's something they could add to this down the line. I don't know how their decisions are made in that regard. Is it like, okay, you know, we want to hold back on this because we think it'll help drive more, you know, purchases of the game early on? Or do they, is it more like a limitation in terms of implementing it on a technical level? I couldn't tell you, but for now, I think it's just, you know, you can do the local kind of game share, or you can hook up with people over the internet that have got copies of the game and play that way, and you could kind of form up a squad or whatever. But I haven't done it yet, so I can't tell you how smoothly that functions or anything like that.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So more to come, no doubt, in the coming weeks for that. Do you have anything else you want to talk about, Greg?
Yeah, not terribly much. Like I said, it's sort of a bit slow going on Rhythm Heaven, but I've been enjoying it. I picked up the Goemon Collection from Japan and just sort of went to some of the more accessible games in it, you know, because some of them you will need to consult a guide to get through, as I've done before. But I guess probably the nicest thing about playing, I went back to the second Super Famicom game, about that is that the last time I would have done it, which was probably, I don't know, probably 2009 at the latest, which is just disturbingly long ago. But it would have been your Wii Virtual Console, of course. It didn't really have like save states or anything. It was, or rewind or anything like that. It was just, you know, you could suspend your game and come back, which was nice. But, you know, that was the extent of it. Whereas here, having save states is kind of nice in one particular sort of aspect for me, which is with the impact battles. You've always got this thing of like, you have this sort of prelude to it where you're just kind of in a side-scrolling scenario where if like you destroy as much stuff as possible, like in kind of impact kaiju kind of mode, then like you have a better start in health when you do the punch out boss fight type of phase of it. But like if you then die during the boss fight phase, you just sort of revert to like a baseline health that isn't reflective of how you did in the preliminary phase, if you want to kind of call it that, right? So it's kind of like having a save state gives you the option of like, well, I could go back and do that sort of silly knockabout kaiju bit again. But, you know, I could also just put a save state in that reflects like a reasonable performance of that and then keep for it. It's only really relevant for like the latter impact battles, because the first ones are not really that difficult. But later on, you know, especially the last one I did, it's like genuinely pretty difficult fight. And I would prefer to kind of get down to business and actually do the boss fight bit, rather than, you know, continually kind of doing the prelim bit to avoid being at a statistical disadvantage. So yeah, little things like that in this context are kind of nice. But other than that, it's just you know, M2 doing what they do, a very nice, you know, solid presentation of classic games, especially Konami, of course. They've done quite a lot of that at this point, you know, with the anniversary collections and you know, Castlevania Contra and so forth. So it seems to live up to that, and it'll be a nice way for me to revisit some more of these Goemon games over time. But yeah, that's about it for now.
Cool. All right, Guy.
Yeah.
Moving on to you. You have Mario Tennis Fever.
I do, but yeah, this was part of a weekend where I was hosting a friend of mine, like a former roommate. He was visiting with his family, and so we had, like, you know, him and his wife and his 2 kids just staying over. So it was fun. It was pretty hectic. Although the kids were very, very quiet. Very, you know, he's got 2 girls, and they kept to themselves a lot, and like they were game to play games with us when, you know, like they didn't want to keep watching something on their iPads or whatever. Very easy kids to get along with. But yeah, so yeah, we played Mario Tennis. It was like the main event. But before that, we also played a little bit of Super Mario Kart. Listeners might notice it's been a while since I talked about beating children at video games. That's because Karen's nieces and nephew are getting too old now, and I can't really like, they don't necessarily want to play against the older people, or, you know, like they might also be getting a little bit too good for me to regularly beat them. Thankfully, these 2 kids were quite young, and my friend James and, you know, like his family, like none of them were really quite as good. So, you know, so I managed to maintain dominance. So that was fun. That was good. So all was right in the world. And we also played a little bit of Smash Brothers, which is not my you know, game, my go-to game. Like I'm not great at it against people who actually know what they're doing. Thankfully, none of those.
So it's not your children. It's not your children beating game. In other words,
but I did manage to beat the children and everyone else. Karen won 1 game, but I won the rest just by knowing how to smash you know, how to do the basic moves, basically, without too much strategy, without necessarily remembering what the character I had picked actually did exactly as special moves. So yeah, again, like I don't know how I had a leg up on everyone else. I was actually, so that was a good one because we could play more than 4. This has, you know, like you can very easily start a game with like 5, 6, 7, 8 players. So we had 5, but my friend only had brought 1 Pro controller. I had, you know, my 2 Switch ones, my 1 Pro 2 controller. And then the only thing I had left that was wireless that we could use was the N64 controller, which I was stuck with. And despite the fact that it is really not an ideal Smash Brothers controller, I managed to dominate most of the time. So again, that was good. But yeah, the main event, Mario Tennis Fever, that one I could not pretend that I could dominate in. Because my friend grew up with the N64. I never owned an N64, but he grew up with it. He had Mario Tennis. He knows what he's doing, and his children are also pretty good at it. I guess he taught them, you know, what to do. And so, yeah, and I don't have like I don't yet have like the instincts of a Mario Tennis player. So he would very easily, like, he kept saying out loud what his strategy was, which was to A-B me, of course, lob the ball over me when I went to the net. And despite this very predictable, very called out, like strategy, the front of the net was just too enticing, I guess, to me. Because usually, you can get by like against the computer, like you can very easily trick it by just like, anyway, by running up to the net. But no such luck against a human opponent who knows what he's doing. So, like, no matter, we were playing doubles, no matter which team I was with, like the only game that I won was when finally, out of pity, I guess, my friend put me in his team, and we were playing against the two kids. But otherwise, like, no matter which kid I was paired with, they would lose when they were paired with me. I was the teammate that no one wanted in their team. So that was humbling.
It's the worst.
Yeah, I am going to have to play more of it to learn to get better at it, and yeah, but no, it was a good weekend. We did some, like we did all the tourist stuff. We had poutine. We went to the old port, whatever. Like it was a good weekend. With lots of I tried to show them, to expose them to Rhythm Heaven Fever. Rhythm Heaven, that's what it's called. Is Battle?
That's Groove. That's the problem, isn't it? Is that Mario Tennis Fever is the new subtitle, but Fever is the old subtitle when it comes to Rhythm Heaven, because that was the Wii one.
I'm so confused. So I tried to introduce them to Rhythm Heaven Groove. It's pretty hard, at the beginning. Like I just like shoved the controller in my friend's hand, like, come on, like, try to get through this. It took a while to get to the to get through the tutorial of the veggie chopping mini game. But eventually he did it, and I don't know, like, mostly the reaction, also like his kids, like I showed them the bubble popping mini game. So early games, I thought that they had maybe like the best chance at converting someone. Like I like the music in those, and the graphics and the scenes, you're chopping vegetables, and when you miss, like a cat just like just grabs a tomato or whatever. Like it's they're like they're my favorite early mini games, I guess. But mostly the reaction was just like, what is this? So unfortunately, I don't think I made any new converts for Rhythm Heaven. But
the one that really stood out to me are the earlier games, to me, of just like being a kind of like messing with the player that I don't really think they've done before, was A for Effort. That one was just like, okay, I wasn't prepared. I wasn't inoculated against the silliness, like, not entirely, but, somewhat with all the other, but where just the images start showing up of it, like, it's like, you gotta press it when A shows up, and so like it spells out T, and then it's just like an image just flashes up of somebody drinking tea. Right. And then like the one that really got me is when they just flashed up the same image again but flipped. It's just, this is so stupid.
Or very clearly models, and just like, was it? It's tea, cocoa, and what's the 4-letter one?
Soda. I think it is. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
No, it just felt like, I don't think they've messed with me in this way before, because a lot of them is, it might not be literally a game from Rhythm Heaven's past, but you can see how it's like very much like, well, it's basically this one, but a little different. Like the one with the soccer balls is very like a Karate Man game from previous games, you know what I mean? But that one was just like, I mean, obviously underneath they're all fundamentally very similar, it's with the rhythm, but that was just a new kind of audio-visual nonsense that I was not quite prepared for.
Yeah. Other than that, I don't have much. If we want to make a new business a little bit longer, I can talk a little bit more about Absolum, I guess. If you want.
Sure.
Yeah,
might
like
as well.
Karen and I just still addicted. Like got back into Absolum in a big way now that that's on Game Pass, and I really hope that at some point the developers like release some sort of paid DLC or something. Like they since it passed the 200,000 sales threshold, they've called it a success. It's now sold over 500,000. Copies, and it's on Game Pass, so it's making money that way. Like I'm really hoping that they can use this to keep going, like thrive, and maybe give us more Absolum. But while they haven't given us paid DLC, they have given us free DLC, free content to extend the life of the game since it's released. And some of those are these challenges that you can, kind of these handicaps or these missions that you can, these conditions that you can put on the game. And if you can beat the game with those conditions on, then you unlock some new upgrades or whatever. They're very, very tough. And Karen and I have been trying to get through this mode where the enemies they become damage sponges if you attack them regularly. They can take 4 times as much damage unless you can trigger kind of like a punish hit, or like, so to punish an enemy, basically you have to hit them right after, or I forget if it's right after or before they hit you, but basically, like, you have to time it with their punches, or you have to. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Normally, in a beat 'em up, you can't block. Like, the very few beat 'em ups that you block. They're made for the arcades. They want you to dodge, but mostly they want you to get beaten up so that you can put more quarters in there. Like, basically the strategy usually amounted to not getting surrounded, like trying not to get too crowded. Basically you try to maneuver your guy to have all the enemies on the one side, and then you can hit them all at once with your punches. But you can't really block. And in this game, it's never been made, like, it's a roguelike. It's not trying to be an arcade game. There are almost like too many ways to mitigate or to block or to parry an attack. You can use your strong attack and try to time it with the attack of the enemy. And unfortunately, I forget the names for each, like technically what each of these things are. But anyway, so there's that one method. That's got the shortest kind of window for you to do it, because there's kind of a delay when you do your strong attack. And the window that it's going to actually parry the thing that the enemy is doing is shortest. You've got you've got a dash move. And if you dash into the enemy, if you press forward and A to dash into the enemy, that's kind of a block. The window is a little bit bigger, but you're not countering, right? You're just like basically blocking the attack. But then if you can dish out some attacks, then that counts as a punishment, and so that works well. But anyway, and then there's just avoiding, like dodging. And so that's when you dodge away from an attack. Like, you dodge up and down when they're about to swing, like a vertical hit. Or if you jump, like if they swing horizontally and you jump over their attack, that's also a dodge. That one's easy to understand. And there's not really any kind of window to it. Like, you either do it or don't. But yeah, so there are like these 3 methods to avoid damage or to block it or to parry it. And it's a roguelike. Every now and then you get an upgrade, maybe like make your regular attacks stronger, like put an effect on your strong attacks, or you can have different effects when you parry, when you block, or when you dodge. And because it's a beat 'em up, because Karen and I are used to playing normal beat 'em ups where you don't really block or anything, we don't have a tendency to try even to block. Like, okay, like there's an enemy attack coming, you just like take it basically. Like you try to kill them before they get a chance to hit you, of course. But otherwise, like we haven't practiced like the timing of the parry and anything like that, and so we're very bad at it. And I guess that this mode where like, okay, the enemies are damage sponges unless you punish them, so you want to do the parry thing every time. I guess this mode is to try to get you to improve your game, to get better at the game, and to use these various methods to mitigate damage. But getting good is tough, it turns out. Yeah. And we cannot figure it out. Like, we cannot get anywhere trying to play the game this way. And yeah, like it's fun that they've added these extra modes for people who would want to keep playing beyond getting to the credits. But boy, it's really hard, and it really makes me feel like, like I thought I had a good grip on the game. Like, of course I I'm good at this. I finished it. But really, like it kind of brings you down to earth again. Like it's almost like getting beaten at Mario Tennis by 8-10 years old. It really, it damages your ego a little bit. Yeah, it's humbling. It's humbling.
But it's like in Dark Souls too, and I always laugh when people just say, when you're struggling with something, well, I mean, the whole game is a struggle, but when they say, oh yeah, just learn how to parry. Just parry.
Oh yeah.
It's like, it's not, it's not that easy. Like, it's just not,
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's, yes, if you're good enough at parrying, you can just completely just wipe that game with no problem. But getting really good at parrying is actually very difficult.
Yeah, it's like people forget what a struggle it is, when you don't have that timing right? Like until you, and I don't know how you can force it. Like, well, I guess there's no way. Like, you just have to eventually, like, it just clicks. Okay, I know how to parry now. I know the timing. I know these enemies.
Yeah.
And yeah, but yeah. So we're still working on that, I guess. Like, it's the game is a ton of fun, but it's really hard. Beyond just adding these extra challenges, they've also added new missions that I don't remember seeing my first time through when I played it on Switch. So there's a little bit more content to the game than there used to be, and that's nice. But I'm hoping that we'll get good soon, and that we'll be able to finish this extra mode. But that's it for what I've been playing this week.
Cool. All right, so I was still playing. I actually technically still am playing Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. I did actually beat it, and now I'm going through and collecting all of the collectible stuff, which is sizable. There's a lot. There's a lot to this game. I haven't started the Order of Giants DLC, but there's just a lot in there. I mean, the real meat of that game is in the Giza, Egypt pyramids area, and in the jungle area, Sukhothai.
Yeah.
And so those are the main ones where I absolutely did everything in the jungle, got everything in there, and then I'm like, okay, well, what else do I have? And I'm thinking, man, I've beaten this game. I beat it already, so I'm going through and revisiting all these areas, and I'm thinking, man, I'm feeling really good. I'm like, man, I've gone through everything, with a fine-tooth comb, and then I realized, like, in Giza, Egypt, man, I probably had like 50% of what was in there.
Right.
And I'm like, man, and the thing is with Giza, it's not like the jungle where you can just roll around on the boat. Mm-hmm. It's like you have to run everywhere and climb over everything to get stuff in that area. So it really is the slowest area to get all of those collectibles.
Yeah.
And I'm so sick of it at this point. I'm like, man, I'm so done with, going down and, like crawling along the ground to get into some burial chamber and, swinging across, chasms and stuff like that. Like, because that's the whole thing is kind of like cave spelunking, all of that Egypt area. And eventually I think I have all the books now, everything, I think.
Right.
And I have most of the artifacts, like the ancient relics. And I still have to, so one of the last things I'm going to do is at the very end, do the big puzzle in the empty room.
Right.
But
so,
yeah, that game is really good.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think that James told you this last time we talked about it, but like you don't necessarily need all the relics to do the big puzzle at the end. So you just get a good amount, and then you can go and try it. I do remember spending way too much time in Giza. And that's the thing, like, so you said you've got all the books, like the books, there are books that can improve your stats, and there are also like these maps that show you where things are, right? Like but that's the thing, like it's deceitful, like especially in Giza, like usually you'll see the thing on the map, like, oh, this thing is here, but then you go there and you can't see like the entrance to wherever you're supposed to go, and it's kind of annoying, like, because some of it is not intuitive at all. Like there's a few, maybe like once you get down to like, oh, I'm missing just like 2 or 3, like you should definitely look it up, because I think that's what I did. And I was like, oh, okay, like that was kind of bullshit. Like the entrance is way over there. Like I can't even see it,
Yeah. Yeah. And so like every time I see because you can, bring up the map, and for a moment you'll see your next objective kind of lingering on the screen. And every time it's below me, like in the ground, I just my heart kind of sinks, because I'm like, man, I'm going to have to find wherever the entrance to the cave is, and then just go through and backtrack through something I've already been through a dozen times, but I didn't have a lighter to like burn something to open up a little hole in the ground or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. It takes a while. But also too, it's what I finally realized was, it really helps. Like if I was to go back and play this game over again, I would say the first thing that I would do is get the disguises that you need to go into the boxing rings, because that saves you so much time, because none of the guards will ever like find you out unless it's like, one of the commanders or whatever.
Right.
They'll find you out. But that would have saved me so much time in Giza. Like I didn't have that until really, really late. And I'm just like, man, like finally I just stopped and I said, okay, I'm not doing this anymore, because you get dropped in, you have to kind of navigate these areas that are just chock full of enemies, and they're just on every side. Like you're in like a little area surrounded by about 10 enemies, and all you're doing is like going from hiding place to hiding place, and trying to not trip somebody off, because it trips everybody off if that happens. So I just stopped and I said, I need to get that disguise, because this is just driving me absolutely nuts. But yeah, so once I just need a few more things, and then I gotta go do the Order of Giants. Have you done the Order of Giants DLC, Guy?
No, I'm kind of soft boycotting Microsoft, so I'm only doing the stuff that's included in the Game Pass that I've already paid for in reward points, for months to come. Anyway. Yep. Yeah. So
I can't see it being too much more. Yeah. I'm curious. I mean, really, it doesn't even. I don't even think it's not going to be that different, because it's like the NPC that you get the quest from is actually in the Vatican. He's in the fountain area, and you just walk up to him and he gives you a quest. And I think if anything, it's going to be some levels underneath that area. But it's nothing. I don't think it's anything truly new. Like it is obviously a new area, but it's not like some new level or something. It's just going to be an extension of that Vatican level.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So,
and that'll be the last thing.
Do you agree, now that you've seen the story, like, where do you rank this Indiana Jones?
It's better than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. It's better than Dial of Destiny. It's better. I don't know. I haven't played every Indiana Jones game out there, but this is up there. I mean, if they made this into a movie, it would probably, like, I would go see that movie and say that was a good Indiana Jones movie. Like, comparable to something like The Last Crusade or something like that.
Yeah.
I thought the ending was a little bit, kind of a letdown, a little bit anticlimactic. Like, it was... And I just thought that the final boss battle was kind of weird and sort of... I thought it was just kind of weird. I mean, I'm not going to... Obviously, no spoilers.
Right.
But, yeah, it was just kind of strange. Like, I feel like conceptually, it sounds cool. Like, if I described it to you, you would say, oh, wow, that sounds really cool. But in execution, it was kind of like,
Yeah, it's kind of it's limited by the... I don't fully remember it, but it's probably a little bit hampered by, like, you know, the first-person view more than the rest of the game, you know? Like...
Yeah,
they you know, it's a design
for sure.
It's a choice that they had to stick with for the entire game, and sometimes it does take away from the cinematic quality of it.
Yeah, like I wonder if like a better choice would have been to have something where it's more environmental, where you have to, you know, do this over here and over there and over there and over there, and then something spectacular happens.
Right.
Of course, sort of like, you know, that seems to be the ending of every Indiana Jones movie, where, you know,
right. Certainly,
somebody gets
Last
it.
Crusade,
right?
Last Crusade is like that, right? I
mean,
mean,
the villain gets what it wants, and that's the worst thing that could have happened.
Right.
That's always for them. You know,
exactly.
That's it.
But yeah, maybe a setup in this game that's a little bit more like Last Crusade, where like, okay, like this puzzle, like, you know, it's very video gamey as a movie, right? Like the final trials, you know, do these things, and then like the villain situation kind of takes care of itself afterwards. Like that would have been. Yeah, I agree. That would have been a good way to handle this game, but instead, what you get is fisticuffs, basically.
Yeah, which is not the greatest. Way to do it. But what I thought was funny, I don't know if it was the same with you, Guillaume. I did not learn how to throw something until basically the very end of the game.
Oh,
when I had to figure out how to. Well, actually, it was a quest. With the girl, where she says, "Hey, throw me up something," and I was like, "How do I do that?" and then because I was wondering, because there's a couple of collectibles where you have to burn like a bird's nest off of something that you can. That's clearly what you have to do, but I had no idea how to do that. I'm sitting there like, how do I get that? Like, I always assumed it would be something I would earn from a book, where I'd be able to like. Grab onto a bird's nest or some object and pull it down or something like that, but it never happened and I never knew how to do it. But then I realized, like, she says, "Oh, throw me up that torch." And I was like, you can throw torches? This is like 40 hours into the game.
Right.
I'm like, you can throw torches? I had no idea. And then it was like, my mind was just blown and like everything became clear to me. And I said, oh my God, like this place, I can get that and I can get that now. But it doesn't really tell you how to, maybe it does once and then just glosses over it and never mentions it again. And none of the quests require you to do that except the very, very late. Like I only encountered one other collectible where I had to like throw up a couple. There's one particular collectible where you have to go down into a pit and pick up something. You know, it's kind of a, you know, put this on this pedestal and you'll open this thing up over here. I had to throw a couple of things up, and that's the only place in the whole game aside from this one part of the quest really, really late where I had to actually throw something. But, yeah, that was pretty funny. I was like, oh my God, you can throw things? I'm like, that's it. Eureka. And of course then at that point I'm just throwing everything. I mean, well, also too, it's in the hidden pyramid. You also have to throw things, but it's not. It's really, really late where you do that. But yeah, they really don't. They don't explain that very well. So yeah, I mean that's a really good game, and I mean you were absolutely right on when you said like this would be top 3 Indiana Jones stories. Like I wish somebody, instead of making some other goofy Indiana Jones movie, I wish somebody would just make this into a movie.
Yeah.
Because this feels more Indiana Jones than anything I've seen since probably Last Crusade. So, and also, you know, like Harrison Ford's like 84 now. Like, can we please just stop like involving Harrison Ford in these movies?
Yeah.
It's just move on. Like James Bond it, where you have somebody else just take over the role or something. Please just move on from Harrison Ford. Just let it go.
No. Keep Harrison Ford. Just de-age him. That always works out.
Exactly. De-aging always works. Worked for Lords of the Rings. Why not? Yeah. De-aging. Yeah. Just like, not like you can't de-age somebody who's 84.
No.
I'm sorry. That would just look too weird. Yeah. But, also, what just came out today, at least in early access, is Halo Campaign Evolved. So I've been playing that. It's Halo. I mean, I have to laugh because I feel like I say the same thing about every Halo game. I always say, if you like Halo, you'll like this game. If you don't like Halo, this game isn't going to convert you. And I would say the same thing. So this is the rebuild. Really, this is a tech demo by Halo Studios for the shift to Unreal Engine 5, more than anything. And it's a convenient excuse to, revisit. I think with something that they know, it makes perfect sense when you think about it, right? Because this is a campaign or a structure of a game that they obviously know inside and out. So they can really, it's something where they could take this story that they know so well and put it into a new engine and tweak it and add a little bit of a few things here and there. So this is, of course, only the campaign. So you can play co-op, online co-op, and they've tweaked it a little bit. They have I think 3 bonus missions, which are kind of like prequel missions that lead up to the events where the campaign starts.
Okay.
And there's you can pick up skulls and there's terminals that you can unlock. So there's collectibles mixed in there. And it really involves, you and Sergeant Johnson, of course, the drill sergeant sort of character, infiltrating a Covenant ship and, hilarity ensues. So that's pretty cool. I don't mind it. Nothing bad about it. It's more Halo, which is good if you're a fan, which I am. And I played a little bit of the first level. I played through the first level, which is, of course, it takes place on the Pillar of Autumn, which is the kind of flagship of the UNSC fleet, and it eventually crash lands on Halo. Mm-hmm. And the same thing with Master Chief. They all crash land on this Halo ring, and everything starts from there. So yeah, I mean, it looks really good. But it's funny because it's good, right? I mean, if you want to play this campaign again, but it's funny when you play it because it's really not as obviously impressive these days, just because it influenced every game after it. So you play it now and you say to yourself, oh yeah, this is just, this is a quality first person shooter. Like, it doesn't really it's no longer separated from the pack or super unique. So it's more about kind of that nostalgia draw. And I know they want to, they kind of sell it like this is going to introduce Halo to a new generation of players. I don't know about that because I'm just very skeptical. Like, would I recommend this for somebody who's never played Halo before? I don't know. If you're really interested in it, if you've always been curious about Halo, sure. I mean, it's an easy sell for me because, I'm a day one buyer because, I'm a sucker for Halo. Especially the earlier games, which are much better than the later games in the series. I didn't really like Halo Infinite at all. I thought it was completely mediocre. And, the multiplayer wasn't super interesting to me. So that kind of came and went. And actually, I went on Game Pass. I did actually boot up my Xbox Series X for the first time in like a year the other day. Mainly to clean off the hard drive. But I did actually go to boot up Halo Infinite, and I realized that I never actually bought that game. I played that game on Game Pass. So that is actually that is the only Halo game I actually don't own, which I thought was funny. And also I was like, man, I have no desire to buy that game. I just have absolutely none. So, but I thought that was funny because usually typically I'm absolutely day one, buy the ultimate, version of whatever Halo game and stuff like that. But that was just the one where I played that game and I was like, really like the death knell for that was when I was going to go back and get the skulls and terminals or whatever. And I found out it didn't have a chapter select. And I was like, wow, I can't believe they didn't put that in the launch version of this game. And that was it. I never played that game again. So,
Yeah,
But
I'm not a Halo fan, obviously, but like they gave that game a grappling hook. You would have thought like that would change things up, that would make some things fun, the movement, the combat, introduce some new scenarios or whatever, but it turned out to not be that exciting, I guess.
No. It was fine. I just felt like that game that was a game, probably the hardest game for me to separate from its development hell stories.
Yeah.
Because if I would have not known about what happened with that game during its development and just took it at face value, I probably wouldn't have such a harsh opinion of it. But the fact that I knew that they pretty much had like rebooted it and, they had to, bring somebody in to basically save the game and just figure out what to do with all of this stuff that they had lying around, that they really had no cohesive vision for the game. They just had a whole bunch of like kind of art assets that they had built, and they had to bring in somebody to kind of figure out what to do with it. I could not get past the fact that with that in mind, it feels like they just cobbled it all together. Like they just had to take a bunch of art assets and just make a game out of it. Make a Halo game, any Halo game. So it really made it hard for me to take it seriously as something that was tailored. It felt like they arrived at what that game was rather than saying this is what this game is going to be and building that. They just said, man, what can we make out of this mess? And the game felt like that to me. It felt like very much like, yeah, this is a sandbox just because we couldn't actually make a real tailored experience, a curated experience out of it. This is the best we could do. And, so it was disappointing. But with this one, a couple of things they do with this, I mean, it is just the campaign. But they do have, obviously they have a whole bunch of skulls that you can get, to alter the experience. They also have like a campaign remix mode that lets you play a level with random skulls, and stuff like that. So they do switch it up a little bit. And it comes, at least the premium, edition that I got, it comes with like an art book that's pretty cool. You can go through all of the different, artwork that they have. So it's good. Yeah. I mean, it definitely, if you're a Halo fan and if you like the first Halo game, I mean, this is going to be right up your alley. Of course, no multiplayer. But I think it's still fun. I mean, I don't really play too much Halo multiplayer these days anyway, so it's no loss for me. I wouldn't, even if they had included multiplayer, I wouldn't have gotten into it too much either. I wasn't there playing the first Halo, so I came in later, probably about Halo 3 maybe. But yeah, it's pretty good. If you're curious about either, I mean, if you're a fan of the original game, you'll definitely like it. If you're kind of new to Halo and you're curious, it's a good way to start off because it does tell the very first story, and the game looks really good because it's a brand new Unreal Engine game. So yeah, it's pretty cool. All right. I think that is going to wrap us for new business. So we will come back after the break, most likely with some email. And we are back on Radio Free Nintendo with your listener mail. And I think for this first email, we're going to have Guy read it.
Sure. Write it. Yeah, I'm not writing anything. Aaron writes,
Fair enough.
Hi, guys. A friend a while ago was expressing to me what I thought was an interesting idea. He's young-ish and has his entire life known video games only after Mario 64 or after 3D playing spaces were introduced. He was lamenting having missed the transition from 2D to 3D, not being able to appreciate the massive shift in perspective and control. Personally, I can vividly remember the first time playing Mario 64, though it was decades ago. Do you think another significant shift could happen like this? What would it look like? Or do you think with online, HD, virtual reality, etc., it's already happened? Stay cool. Aaron from Buckhorn.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a big one. Like we've all gone through the 2D, 3D transition, and I feel like Well, I have feelings about, the early days of 3D and how new it was. And, sometimes I can put myself back in that mindset of seeing Mario 64 for the first time and just being like, like trying to show my mom, what an advancement it was. And she was like, well, it looks more colorful. And, and I would just run around with Mario around a post and like, see, like he's going around it. He's going around it, and she was not catching on that was something that was new.
Exactly.
But yeah, like I personally, I'm not sure. Like, certainly, like a new technology could facilitate this kind of like this a shift like this, but I'm not sure if that would be enough, because like I feel like a lot of technologies have been introduced since this, consoles have been made to make 3D games more easily. But I still feel like by and large we're still kind of playing game designs that were around during like the PS2 era.
Mm-hmm.
Am I being a little bit, reductive or?
No, I don't think so at all. I think VR is always going to be a niche, and even VR it's just like you said. It's just a different way of manipulating kind of the same game environments that we always see. And they've never really bridged that gap of making those games feel good, right?
Mm-hmm.
They look cool, but there's more. I don't know. VR games feel like VR games. They're still they still have that same sort of goofiness. They feel like even less polished 3D games most of the time.
Right.
No matter how good they are.
Yeah. And even as I'm asking this question, I kind of realized that maybe we have seen a shift, but it was not meant for us, or we haven't lived through it because we're, late 30, 40-year-olds. And so it didn't hit us in that same way. But probably like the biggest shift from after 2D to 3D is probably came with games like Minecraft and I hate to say it, but Roblox, where
Fortnite,
like there's
stuff like that, yeah,
right, where there's maybe been more of a focus on like the player creation, player making their own rules, their own playground, their own things that they want to make, and be able to share it, be able to save it locally, but more importantly to share it with everyone. But that's not something that I personally care for or care about. Because also I'm old and jaded, and my tastes have calcified, and I like my games to look a certain way and feel a certain way, and so I haven't really tried to get into Minecraft or anything like that. But like that I would probably say that was as big of a shift from 2D to as the shift from 2D to 3D.
Yeah.
Well, another thing that's changed, or a big change that happened, not exactly in the same sort of time as the, shift from, to polygonal graphics and the ways that could open up game design, was kind of the, how games were primarily kind of monetized and how that, kind of influenced design, right? Because of course, even though the pre-3D sort of consoles, were consoles, they were home games, they were so much more influenced by the arcade than the post 3D systems, have been, right? The arcade was where video games kind of began. And so even when you get a decent way into, console games at home being a big industry and clearly not something that was just, gonna go away in some sort of, market bust, like, people might have thought after, what happened in America with Atari. There was still a lot of the design of the games, even if they weren't literally arcade ports, was heavily influenced by arcade design, right? And so, the ways in which it would test the player, or the ways in which it would try to impress the player, were all very much in that tradition. But then, as the 3D era takes on, of course, there were arcade games with polygonal graphics, and they did what they tried to do, from the earliest ones, stuff like Virtua Fighter, Virtua Racing, all that was just trying to make, a novelty factor. It's something that looks, completely different from what you'd seen before. So it's not like they didn't suit the arcade. But what it really did for console gaming was say, have the opportunity to have these long form experiences and explore worlds that feel more convincing than ever. Of course, such games already existed in large numbers before, with, RPGs, of course, and action adventures of various sorts. But it really kind of felt like with 3D that, it kind of took over. It became even more mainstream. Some of the biggest selling games all of a sudden were those, really quite long form experiences. You think of that generation where polygonal games kind of took hold, and, some of the biggest selling games for the particular systems would be things like Ocarina of Time and Final Fantasy VII. These are your big deals. Obviously, there are plenty of other things, sports games, things that were arcadey, and plenty of sports games, racing games, all this kind of stuff. But, it kind of marked the shift of console gaming being more of its own thing, and game design getting, onto its own distinct path that was very separate from the arcades. Of course, what's happened, over the past, in the 21st century, really, especially from the end of the aughts onwards, is the mobile and how that disrupts, how things are monetized, right? And how much it could be about getting a lot of money out of very few players, or or having a lot of people, as you already said, Guillaume, contributing user generated things, and kind of making money off cross promotions and ads and all this kind of stuff, and that affects game design inevitably as well, right? So that I feel like is probably the most profound shift that we've had post 3D. Is not something that's as tangible as that, where it's okay, we can create these worlds and interact with them now using polygonal graphics in a way we couldn't before. But it definitely has kind of disrupted to a fair degree, I think the nature of just okay, we make these sort of home console experiences where you kind of play through them from beginning to end, and that's kind of it. It's a lot more about how do we keep people engaged indefinitely? How do we sell them expansions? How do we, get them to buy cosmetics? All this kind of the stuff that gets into kind of almost like gambling, or the loot boxes and the ultimate teams, for sports stuff and all that. It feels like all that is really the kind of most significant sort of evolutions that we've had, which, again, being kind of set in my ways, I have not interacted with that much, but equally you can't really ignore it either, because it permeates, doesn't it? Inevitably does.
Yeah.
Anything that has success in the marketplace is going to permeate philosophies everywhere, right? People are going to try stuff. It's maybe we won't go all the way that kind of model, but we can kind of, this is what players expect now. So we've got to kind of at least meet them halfway, or, it ends up affecting everything. You can't, deny that. And I think, think about something like that. It's much less immediate than just hey, here's Mario 64, here's a landmark event, here's Final Fantasy 7, here's a landmark event. But it is quite profound, I think, over time, and presumably the effects will only continue to be felt.
Yeah, just to our credit, or to to cut us some slack, yes, we're older, our tastes have calcified, we're not all that drawn to the new things that the kids are into, but also some of these advances in trying to addict people, kind of weaponizing people's games against people to get them to spend more money in mobile games and stuff like that, is actually distasteful and evil.
Yeah, it's a turnoff. Yeah.
Right. it's a turn off, and it shouldn't exist. And so, but it works for those companies, and so they keep doing it. And absent any kind of laws that would prevent them from preying on people's worst impulses, yeah, like I guess they're going to keep doing it.
Yeah, it's exhausting. The one thing I could see happening that might be a kind of a shift, not really, and I don't think anything will ever replace sort of that shift from 2D to 3D, just in the fundamental way that games are played, consumed, viewed, right? Like literally having to design for a different type of space that the player is in, and grapple with all of these different things like the cameras and stuff like that. I could see something happening like procedurally generated games using AI that is like really like a massive toolbox, like some sort of a virtual world where it's a massive toolbox that is generated specifically, like tailored for you by AI, right? Rather than, something like Diablo where like you go into a dungeon and it's different every time, but from kind of like a predetermined toolbox. Like I could see something like that. That's probably the next quantum leap, I would say, would be something like that where AI is used to really tailor your game experience, but not in a crappy, shitty, microtransaction-y, manipulative way, like actually a quality way of doing it. So sort of like an MMO, except a really, like a truly kind of, like endless MMO, because it's like the experience is different. It's not just like a theme park. It's like every time you go to the theme park, it's different. I could see that happening. But,
you know me, and I'm an AI skeptic. I just...
Yeah, I know. Everybody hates AI, but I mean...
But equally,
it's possible.
I'm not terribly knowledgeable about it. That's the first thing. So, take it for what it's worth. But from my point of view, what is seemingly clear is that all these companies are throwing enormous amounts of money at, they're going to find the application of it that is, it's like striking gold. It's like, well, we know there's going to be some applications to this that will be sustainable and game changing, and we can gain a competitive advantage by getting there first, but no one obviously is all that clear on which of those it will actually be. So they're sort of casting about, trying it in all sorts of different, sort of ways, and presumably some will find success, and presumably those, will have a profound effect on how games are, amongst many other things, are made, and the kind of design that emerges from that. But I have no capacity to anticipate that whatsoever. Certainly, I can bemoan the lack of seeming prescience or how well thought out some of these approaches are from certain companies, but I certainly couldn't do any better.
Right. I just like, to me, the problem with like an AI game that's just like tailored for you is that it seems awfully kind of solipsistic, just how like a game that you're playing that you can't really talk with anyone about because they won't have the same experience because their game is going to be tailored to them. Like, or if you want to talk about what's happening in your game, it's like a little bit like telling them about a dream you had, like it doesn't really...
Well, I'm thinking about it from the standpoint of sort of maybe like a kind of an AI dungeon master sort of thing where, or maybe even like a massively multiplayer thing where it's a world. And like, absolutely, like what you're saying is totally valid, because people like to think that they're playing through a story and they can relate to that story. Like when you watch a movie, you want to talk to somebody and say, hey, what did you think about that? That was really cool, right? Or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like discuss it, like have that common ground. But I'm just thinking of what AI does well and like what it could do. And that is something where if it had, sort of like AI can like build code for you, right? Well, it builds code for you because it knows everything about that programming language, and it can build something using what it knows, right? So just thinking about that, like applying that to game worlds, that same sort of thing. And hey, it probably most of the time it would be absolutely terrible. But I think it would be, maybe out of that you might get the next Minecraft, because I'm sure people probably looked at Minecraft and said this is pretty terrible. But when it first came out, but over time it was like just became something really remarkable and really cool. But yeah, it's hard to say really where it is, because I think where things are going, just because I think visually, I think we've reached the apex of really what people want.
Or
visually.
The apex of what people will be able to afford to see if the prices on RAM and on hardware keep going up like this. Like, I don't think people are going to be able to afford much longer, a better machine than they used to have.
Exactly.
So,
and especially when it's effectively going to do the same thing and play the same kinds of games they're already playing. It's like, oh, like what? So this is going to be a big open world game that will now take me 300 hours to get through, as opposed to the 100 hours this other game took me. But it's effectively just the same type of stuff and the same kind of gameplay. It's just, it's going to be an even bigger Grand Theft Auto. I mean, it's just to a certain point, it's like it's not worth it. It's just it's not really giving people anything new. So, and I know. I always harp on AI. I'm the AI guy, but I just the only thing that AI is the only thing that I can see that's actually really like a transformative. It's kind of my point. It's like AI is the only kind of thing that I can see actually doing something different than just like, here's an even bigger world with even better graphics that requires even more people to make. And this one cost us $1 billion instead of $500 million. Yeah, it's just. Like, in terms of actually changing the gameplay experience, like, to me, probably, like, the next frontier is having something that kind of changes around you or something like that, rather than building these large games that are just effectively theme parks.
Right.
But I don't think anything's ever going to change going from 2D to 3D, because that was a really, really wild change, but also a very obvious change, kind of like that was the next thing to do. It's no longer obvious what the next thing to do is.
Right.
No, and I suppose the virtual reality was kind of, bundled up in that for a little bit, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like early VR demos, kind of had, relatively, we look at them now as being like primitive polygonal graphics and things. But again, I've never interacted with any kind of VR personally. So I can't really tell you why it isn't or hasn't been more kind of consequential, really, all these years, so many years after, you've been kind of hearing about VR, like I said, even before Mario 64 existed. And yet it's never, and of course we've had, consumer devices for quite some time, that can deliver a pretty, from everything I've ever read, as a technically kind of competent experience in that regard. But it seems like its reach is limited. I guess cost, that Guillaume already mentioned, it remains a factor. But perhaps there's just something about the nature of it. It's sort of exclusive, it's kind of an exclusive experience, it's not as easy to kind of share with other people, obviously, and stuff. Like, it just doesn't seem like it certainly hasn't made it to that kind of mainstream place where it's like, no, this is everything now, especially, you can if for people, as we mentioned in the email, who are younger, might forget or not be as cognizant of just the almost, you can almost call it an overcorrection in those early days of the 3D era, where it's just like, 2D, it's not, like, I don't know whether people would have been imagining, we would have been playing as many side-scrolling games as we do in the 2020s back then. They just thought it was going to, like, go the way of silent movies or something, you know what I mean? Like, it was just
and it looked like that at one point, right?
It's like
nobody was making 2D games.
Doesn't matter, what Symphony of the Night or, Mega Man, X4 or whatever. It's like, nah, fuck that. It's just, it's dead, isn't it? It's a moribund art. And obviously, that has not kind of borne out ultimately. Is like, no, it's just a different kind of game. You can still enjoy it. It doesn't have to be completely abandoned. And obviously Nintendo themselves came around to that eventually by saying, oh, you know what, we could have a side-scrolling Super Mario game not on a portable, and it sold fuckloads.
Yeah, it's funny, because it's almost like you look at it and it's almost like somebody said, oh my god, I've discovered ping pong. I'm never playing chess again. It's like, that just makes no sense at all. That's not how it works. They're two totally different types of games. So, yeah. But it's an interesting question. But I think probably if there is a shift, it'll come completely out of nowhere. But I don't think that, by no means am I saying that AI is a silver bullet for this either.
Yeah, and like there have been, kind of blips that were, I don't want to say like fad, but motion controls, or like the Wii certainly, like it looked like maybe it could be a revolution. But it turned out to be more of a, like people went back to the old ways of controlling games. Like the motion controls did remain, at least if you're not Xbox, like all the controllers have some degree of motion controls, but it did not become like, oh yeah, like every tennis game from now on is going to be played as if you were swinging a real racket around. So not a complete shift in the way that we make and perceive and play games, but still, like it did have a lasting impact. But maybe like it didn't completely change the landscape like 3D did.
No,
yeah, and it was a funny time because there was like, for a while there was this overriding sense that people want realism. This has to be like as games get more realistic, this non-realistic stuff is just going to be left in the dust because that's not what people want, right? And it's funny to think back because escapism by its very nature is not realistic. So the thought that an unrealistic game will suddenly be passé just feels really silly now. If anything, people want more escapism, not less. They want less realism in a lot of ways, I think.
Yeah, I think that a lot of that is assumptions by the people finance, like the publishers basically, like mandating that games be a certain way because that's how they viewed their audience.
Yep. And they're going by what's worked.
Right.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
There's a
certain contingent, that's very enthusiastic about seeing new types of experiences or seeing advancements in the medium as they would, characterize it. But obviously, that's where Nintendo were able to kind of revitalize their whole business in the aughts is by saying, well, yeah, that's that's one kind of group, but there's a bigger market out there than just them and their kind of view of what games are and what they're for and what's interesting and what's progress and what isn't, and you could just appeal to other people if you're not going to be able to reach them. And that was very successful, and it did have an effect on the rest of the industry. You had Move, you had Kinect, but as Guillaume said, it just sort of, the equilibrium at the end of it all was just that it got kind of subsumed. It became a little, it got incorporated into things like the current PlayStation controllers and Nintendo controllers and things, and it's an option, and some things will emphasize it, but it's not the mainstream kind of default experience, shall we say, for any given game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a good point that you raised too about or kind of allude to that, how do you expand? One of the things, it's, you see stuff like Game Pass trying to expand the audience of video gaming, right? Because like what we just talked about, where it feels like you're marketing to the same people over and over again, and trying to move video gaming away from, it's like a video game is a console hooked up to a television, right? You have stuff like Pokemon Go, things like that Like, that's the kind of thing that has kind of come out of nowhere and really not been replicated really too well at all. And kind of expanded not only what a video game was, but what you play it on and who plays it. So, I mean, maybe the future, the next big 2D to 3D is something that has nothing to do, is a video game concept that has nothing to do with the game console at all, right? You hear Sony talking about how they're trying to move PlayStation, for example, away from being a game console hooked up to a television. So you have to wonder, that sort of, and this is something that Nintendo's always been really good at, is saying, okay, well, we think that, that a video game, like that's where I think their philosophy of being a toy maker versus a video game company necessarily has always served them well, because they don't put themselves in a little box. They're like, okay, this may have video game elements, but it can be something completely different. It could be like a little, Tamagotchi style thing that you carry around in your pocket, and it has video game elements, but it's not a console hooked up to a TV. So I think it'll probably be something like that, something that really maybe comes out of nowhere to reach mass market status that people haven't thought of because it's not within that box, but it has the same appeal and maybe the same like kind of rewards system that a video game has, but it's just some sort of other interface entirely.
That's the trouble with this type of question. Like, imagine the future of video games. Okay, like, sure, I'll get right on that.
I've said it many times. I have a very poor imagination.
Yeah, exactly. So you're no Miyamoto, Greg. We'll leave it at that.
Certainly not. No.
Although you could probably design a mean theme park. I will say that.
No, again, I think imagination is required for that. The most dour theme park that even British people will be like, nah, I'm out. I'm not doing it. That's what will come out of my head.
Yeah. All right. So for the next email, I will read this one here. Daniel writes, this week we had the announcement, this is from a couple weeks ago, I think, but this week we had the announcement of Switch 2 ports of Octopath Travel 1 and 2, as well as the stealth release of Star Ocean's Second Story R for Switch 2. Recently we also had from Square-Enix announcements of the Switch 2 version of Dragon Quest XI and Final Fantasy X/X2. All of these, barring Final Fantasy X, X-2, are just basic visual upgrades to resolution and frame rate. They will also offer 0 upgrade path if you have the Switch 1 versions, and also do not feature cross-save. In all of your humble opinions, what is the logic from Square-Enix here on offering no upgrade path for this latest batch of games, other than upsetting people who already bought the original versions? You have Nintendo offering substantial upgrades to the Xenoblade games for a small fee, but then Square-Enix just seems to almost be like, fuck you, you buy it again. Surely, it would make sense to offer even a paid upgrade path for your games, as they absolutely cannot be thinking people will rebuy a game for a minor fix. The amount of money to be made from people who would gladly rebuy a game for this kind of upgrade must be dwarfed by the amount of those who would give even $10 to upgrade the visuals. I'll leave it at that. Keep up the great work, and thanks for being the somewhat sane voices in my head when I go out on a walk on the weekends / start of the week, depending on when you upload. So yeah, this is an interesting one. Do you think this has to do with with how many people bought the original version of the game?
Maybe, but like I'm not sure if there's actually any there's no rhyme or reason that I can discern, to be honest. Like Square Enix seems to be doing like 2 or 3 different things, and like I can't afford, depending on what it is that they're updating for Switch 2, and I can't really see a through line. I know that the Saga games, like Saga 2, Romancing Saga 2, the remake,
that's right.
That one was a paid upgrade if you wanted the Switch 2. So it was working just like Xenoblade is working for Nintendo. You just, pay $10, you get, the improved resolution and frame rate. But I do think that you probably benefited from just playing on the Switch 2 playing the Switch 1 version and the Switch 2 in some way also, probably by, like with quicker load times or something to that effect.
Kind of benefits of the hardware just being more powerful.
Yeah, but now, like, this whole way that they're handling, it seems mostly the Octopath games and the Final Fantasy games is that, okay, no, like there's no upgrade path, there's no compatibility with the saves, you just have to buy this whole new version for it if you want the Switch 2 version. But the problem is that I don't remember for which game I read this, but I think maybe it's I'm blanking on. It's like one of those secondary RPGs from Square-Enix.
It doesn't narrow it down entirely.
No, I know,
like Bravely Default or something?
Etrian Odyssey adjacent in that I think it shares a creator.
Okay.
Something Earth. Fuck me. Something Second Story R. Like, I know the subtitle.
Star Ocean.
Star Ocean. Thank you. Jeez.
Yeah, he mentions it. Yeah.
Right.
He mentions it right here. It's
so Star Ocean. I believe like you have to buy the whole game to upgrade it. Like there's no path to upgrade if you have the previous version. Fuck you. Except that I think that it was announced. I read that somewhere that they did unlock the frame rate for if you were playing the Switch 1 version and the Switch 2. So they went as far as to give you some of the advantages of playing that you would get if you were playing the Switch 2 version. But
yeah,
not
it kind
all
of says what I talked about with the Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, like where it wasn't really like a Switch 2 edition or anything, but they did a patch for the Switch 1 game where it's like, if you want to play this at 60 on Switch 2, we'll kind of unlock it so that the passive benefits kind of get you there. So something like that. But
that's the thing. Like the Switch 2 edition of Star Ocean 2. Like, literally, I think the only two upgrades is the improved frame rate and the improved resolution, and that's it. So by giving you some of
half of it, in a way, wouldn't you, by just having the unlocked frame rate that presumably would perform. Like, it might not be rock solid, but presumably would be much more kind of much improved.
So they kind of right there disincentivize you from buying, from upgrading. So I don't know what the strategy is there. Like, maybe they don't really have one. Maybe, like...
Well, and just to... I mean, look, obviously, that the problem is that there are very many of these, and I'm certainly not familiar with the details on very many of them at all.
Right.
But just to demonstrate how all over the map they've been, I believe in the case of the Final Fantasy Tactics re-release or whatever you want to call that that they put on Switch, that has a Switch 2 upgrade that's just free. It's not even like a paid upgrade like Romanced Saga 2.
Right.
So we've had free, we've had pay for an upgrade pack, and we've had pay for the whole thing. You've had it. They've been all over the map basically in just over a year. And that's the thing. I mean, my one thought would be, certainly in the earliest going, would be you experiment a bit, in terms of like, okay, let's try some different things. Let's see how consumers respond. Mm-hmm. And, that may well, guide your thinking going into the future. Are we past the point now where you're talking about experimenting more like, okay, this is just what we think will work based on, what we know? About the marketplace as it exists and about the fan base for this particular game as well. And then there's a question of, I guess, what they think is commensurate with the amount of work that's gone into the, and how much development cost and time or whatever has gone into making this Switch 2 version. Again, I couldn't tell you about much about those, but a lot of variables in the equation. I guess the real factor you got to come back to has got to be, they feel like how many people do you expect to upgrade? And of those people, how many of them are so enthusiastic that they would actually be willing to pay full price.
Right.
And if you're not expecting it to be a very large number, it starts to get more plausible that the share of that small number is large enough of people that were willing to pay full price that you say to yourself, let's go for them. Let's just get what we can out of them. And that's like the more bankable kind of route is just, we believe that these people who are the most enthusiastic about our particular, game here, they are willing to pay again just because of how much they like it. Maybe they want to, collect another physical version of it or something, even if it's a game key card. And, we can bank on that. And then if we want to do something down the line, maybe about, varying it up or just straight up discounts and sales, well, then we'll get to that later. But for now, what we don't want to do is leave money on the table by maybe pursuing an upgrade pack strategy where a bunch of people who would have been willing to pay more like, whatever it is in each case, I don't know, $60, end up you're doing it for 15 or and you've just that ship sails there. I assume it's something roughly centered around that of just like what percentage of the people that have any interest in this at all are really super enthusiasts that actually are willing to spend that kind of money even on something that might be in truth a modest cosmetic upgrade.
Yeah,
and I guess you got to know your own fan base for that, and that's their bet to make.
I guess, yeah, but then again, like there was that stretch when they were releasing all these games that I don't think too many people were buying, right? Like all of a sudden it was like so many Saga games and
well, it was various Daylife, I think.
Right, yeah, that was one of them.
I feel like that should also be like an umbrella term for all those games that came out.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and so so do they know their audience all that well? Allow me to doubt it. But also, like,
I think skepticism is perfectly reasonable.
Yeah, and like you got to think, like the Switch was such a massive sales success. I cannot believe that they could expect to wring as much money from the much smaller pool of diehard Square Enix games. Square Enix fans who bought the Switch 2 so far, than from like all the millions of people who own Switches. Like so many of them probably bought all the Final Fantasies at some point when they were on sale, right? Like so, if you could get all those people to just spend another additional $10 to upgrade to the Switch 2, I would think that that's a much better proposition for everyone, including I would think that Square Enix would make so much more money that way.
Sure, but one of the problems with that is they got to have a Switch 2 to be able to do it. And while the Switch 2 has sold at a good pace so far, it's still, as you already mentioned, a fraction of the user base, the install base that the original Switch has, right? And that's just, the original Switch has pretty much the biggest install base anyone's ever had, right? Apart from the PS2, maybe. But, the bottom line is that Switch 2 at the moment, has a fraction of those players, and therefore I guess that's where that argument comes back of like, well, who are the kinds of people that have a Switch 2 at this point? It is more the ultra enthusiasts maybe that are willing and able to spend the amount of money it takes just to own the system. Maybe that's how they get to the feeling of like, what, we're just better betting on, the ultra enthusiast element of it, because those are the people that actually own that system right now. They could still be wrong, but I think you could kind of see how you get there.
Yeah. And just the fact, too, that, I can only think that they're probably looking at the sales of those games on Switch 1 and saying, these sales have completely dried up. There's no way we're going to juice anything more out of these, so maybe we might as well just start over on the new platform. Or maybe they're looking at it like, we thought that this could have done more, but since people are abandoning Switch 1 as a platform, which is not really the case, but I could see, absolutely right, Greg, I can see how they get there, where they said, well, we're not going to get anything more off of Switch 1 with these games. We might as well just kind of start from scratch with these minor upgrades to give people a new starting point on Switch 2, rather than having to go back and figure out like how to upgrade and how to get them and all that kind of stuff. Maybe it just tells an easier story for the user, right? Oh yeah, there's a Switch 2 version. Just go get that. Don't you have to worry about it, the whole upgrade thing and all of that kind of stuff. There's just a newer version.
Yeah, well, if only they could have settled in that story before confusing everyone with, by offering so many different options.
I know
for their different
these
games.
things don't exist in a vacuum, right? As is mentioned in the email, like Nintendo aren't doing things that way, right? I mean, and to be honest, I mean, the Switch 2 edition thing is a fair bit more prevalent than I think I was expecting. You know what I mean? Like, we would have emails, about like, which games would you give a Switch 2 edition to or whatever, and we might talk about, which of the Xenoblades, would really benefit from it, or like, which one would you like to get that treatment versus the one that probably will? Well, they all have.
Right.
That's the thing. That's the thing, isn't it? It's like, so I think that's point of the thinking, that there was this sort of more scarce like resource, that it's like, implicit in that is like, well, they're not going to do all the Xenoblades. Oh no, they have. It's a really quite substantial part of the software strategy, even beyond that first year that we're into the second one, and it's still this substantial part of it. So again, I feel like it's the decision making. If you're Square Enix and you're not factoring that in to your decision making, you're not doing it right, because it is going to affect people's perceptions. Whether or not you would have made the same positions in Nintendo's place is beside the point, right? And also, a platform holder's calculus is always going to be different from a third party calculus as well. But it may also be a question of philosophy, or other things, certain beliefs about how you want to condition people's expectations or whatever. But the bottom line is, they have to deal with the reality of the market as it exists and as it's been conditioned to expect things by the platform holder. So in that sense, they're kind of swimming upstream a little bit by going full price on these. So you really they must be quite resolute about this, to do it that way. But maybe it's, like I said, some of the earlier things they've done, experiments they've done, just kind of suggest, looking at the numbers, like, hey, if you project this out, this is the best way to go about it. But no, it does cast it in a different light when you put it in that broader context.
Yeah, and maybe in a kind of a counterintuitive fashion, they might have said, well, we're not going to invest any more real money. Like, we're not going to do a Switch 2 remake or remaster of these games. Mm-hmm. So this is all we're going to do on Switch 2 for these games.
Right.
So,
but that just, so I can understand like upgrading, making Switch 2 versions of Xenoblade, right? Because like Xenoblade 2 and 3, they were made for the Switch, and so they were made with certain compromises, right? Like maybe a little bit less draw distance to keep the frame rate better, or like there were trade-offs to making a game for the Switch. The Final Fantasy XX2 ports, they're like ports of a collection that was on the PlayStation 3. There are two games that were on the PlayStation 2. I don't think that those games were pushing the Switch. Like anything that they wanted to put in the Switch version, they probably had no trouble putting in, right? Like I don't know, like if they really couldn't crank up the frame rate the way that they wanted to, but like certainly like the main difference between the Switch and Switch 2 version is like just the resolution, because the screens are a different resolution. So anyway, like I guess where I'm going with this is like, first, like who are the fans who are chomping at the bit to get a Switch 2 version of a port of a PlayStation 3/PlayStation 2 game? where like the benefits are not all that obvious between Switch 1 and Switch 2. And why is Square Enix even bothering? If that's
again, maybe we're not out of the experimental phase. Maybe they want to see, what this kind of release can achieve at this particular time in the transition from Switch 1 to Switch 2, especially maybe in Japan. Maybe it seems more potentially fruitful than it does here. I'm not sure, because of course, there's certainly the pace of Switch 2 adoption has been fastest in Japan for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
Maybe that kind of makes it seem more viable, or it's just, like you said, you kind of still honing your kind of strategies for the years to come, which you presumably will be quite a lot. But you could look at it as also sort of an opportunity, in the sense that even though the Switch 2 has got off to a relatively quick start, and of course the Switch 1 generation ran rather long, so we had quite a long time to kind of anticipate and prepare for this transition, there's still inevitably a relative kind of open field for you to try and kind of people who do have the money and the enthusiasm to spend on that console early on are looking for more things to spend on to some degree. It's kind of not that there's any shortage, good God, right, really, but maybe you just think, hey, if we could put something on, especially again in Japan, probably more so, on a store shelf, in a box, and kind of it somehow, it's going to kind of convince people to get it. Which, even Nintendo is still doing that. I mean, while the upgrade pack, exists for Xenoblade and these various other games, they do still like to actually have the package version. Ultimately, it might be a few months later, but you will have the package Switch 2 version of Xenoblade X and the original right, Xenoblade and so on. So, they obviously see some value in doing that too. They just are perfectly willing to have it exist alongside the upgrade path as well. But again, platform holders should think differently.
Yeah. I just checked the Nintendo World Report review of Final Fantasy X X2 HD Remaster, and there's a one paragraph, very short. Speaking more technically about the Switch 2 version, there are some subtle distinctions once you get under the hood and spend some time with both titles. For one, the Switch 1 version displays at 1080p compared to 1440p on the Switch 2. While both versions run at 30 FPS, there is improved texture filtering present in the Switch 2 game. And that's it. Those are the two improvements, texture filtering and the resolution, but they both run at 30 FPS. So it's so slight of a difference, So
yeah.
I would personally I have, because I'm an idiot with more money than time and cents apparently. I have bought, while they were on sale, a lot of these Final Fantasies on the Switch on the eShop. I'm not looking to upgrade them just because the upgrades happen to exist. Maybe I would have been tempted if there had been a pretty cheap upgrade path offered, but as it stands, I'm not that distraught that I don't have access to improved texture filtering. So I don't know. If you're a really, really, really big fan and you need the complete package, sure, go for it. It's your money, and it's unfortunate that Square Enix is not more, it's not nicer about it, I guess. But otherwise, it doesn't seem like there's anything really worth protesting. I don't know. There's not. The improvements are so slight that I feel like anyone should be able to live without them.
Yeah, you're not getting left behind by any means.
Yeah.
All right, so Greg, I think we do have one kind of follow-up email for this.
We do, yes. So Seren wrote in with some observations about an upgrade pack. So Seren wrote, "Today I purchased the Nintendo Switch 2 Edition upgrade pack for Nintendo's sometimes published, depending on the region, game, Fitness Boxing 3, Your Personal Trainer, and learned that it has a truly bizarre set of features. While the primary features of Fitness Boxing 3, Your Personal Trainer, Nintendo Switch 2 Edition," and also, yeah, I guess to be really accurate, you have to say the Fitness Boxing 3 Your Personal Trainer Nintendo Switch 2 Edition game. They love that, don't they? I just saw the Xenoblade 2 upgrade trailer and they dropped the Switch 2 Edition game on me and I was like, oh, bloody hell. So now you have to suffer also. So anyway, the primary features are the ability to use more precise motion tracking with the Joy-Con 2 wireless controllers and the ability to be tracked on screen with a compatible USB-C video camera. I was also curious about how it would handle game share. For those who don't know much about fitness boxing, they, as the name would imply, are games where you move back and forth to the beat and throw punches rhythmically to work up a sweat. There have been many entries in the series, including one where you can have Kenshiro from Fist of the North Star as your trainer, and one where you can have noted Sega mascot Hatsune Miku as your trainer. But they are all single-player experiences that do not function in handheld mode. So I was very curious how game share would work. Now, James already knows this, but it turns out that you cannot use game share over game chat for this title, which is to say that you cannot play it online. Instead, the developer Sin Sophia, the Japanese publisher Imagineer, and the international publisher Nintendo all appear to believe that the user experience for this should be to be in the same room, each with their own Nintendo Switch 2 or Switch system, each with their own Joy-Con 2 or Joy-Con wireless controllers, and each with their own display that crucially will not have overlapping audio, as being in sync with your own audio stream is gameplay relevant, and due to technical limitations, the game share will not have perfectly synced up audio that you can both rely on. This is baffling for about 100 reasons and is most reminiscent to me of the local video chat feature in the Star Fox 64 3D game for the Nintendo 3DS family of systems, in terms of being a bizarre feature that will likely provide zero functional value outside of exactly the development studio's offices. So today I come with a question. What game published by Nintendo of America or Nintendo of Europe for the Nintendo Switch family of systems first does not have a Nintendo Switch 2 Edition upgrade pack available or announced, but do you think would be ripe for an unloved or as yet unused feature to be added to it? Voice-to-text recognition in Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, perhaps, to detect when you're scared? Mouse controls in Jump Rope Challenge? The world is your proverbial oyster. Bonus points if you can read my email with all the Nintendo brand guidelines represented. It's Nintendo.
Just make sure the caps are correct there.
Oh, sure.
You know,
Yeah.
if GameCube was in there, it would have to be Nintendo GameCube all caps.
Yes, as Nintendo's a value business partner, would never go against their corporate brand guidelines. No. Well, yes, and I love them, as you've already heard.
Yes, these are the rules of decorum, Greg.
Yeah, certainly. So, yeah, for me, I don't know whether this qualifies as a particularly unloved feature because it's shown up a lot. But, I mean, the reality is I don't think it would happen because I'm assuming a sequel is more likely. But I think a Switch 2 edition of Super Mario Maker 2 would be quite potentially fruitful on a number of levels. First of all, mouse controls, I think, would be a natural fit, right? And might somewhat provide the kind of, makeup for the loss of the gamepad, functionality that you had with Wii U, with the touchscreen and the stylus and everything. But the other thing I think about it would be, I think, just game chat on that seems like one of the more natural uses of that feature, right? In terms of, like, if you're getting input from people, about making a level, it's like, okay, you could show them, like, what am I making? and kind of get ideas from people and all, and kind of design it together. It seems more natural than just like, oh yeah, what are you doing over on that corner of the Mario Kart World map or whatever. I feel like it's always a little bit surprising we haven't seen something. It's probably more likely just a Mario Maker 3, but something from that in space already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to me, also Game Chat is the obvious addition to any Switch 1 game that I would want, and the one that I've wanted for a long time, and that's not going to happen, unfortunately, because of reasons, is probably Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, which was published by Nintendo, and I don't think it's a particularly well-regarded Marvel Ultimate Alliance game, but it did seem like it would scratch that itch of like a co-op experience for for me and Karen. Except that from what I recall in the reviews, or like I'm not sure if you could play it 2 players on the same screen, or if you did, like like I think that the couch co-op might have been compromised if you were playing on a single system, if indeed you could even do that. I think that the experience that they wanted you to have was like the 2 people needed to have each a copy of the game, and that's how you could play together, like local wireless or online. Oh no, okay. I'm seeing here a page like, so you could play 1 to 4 players offline, but from what I understand, like that was a really poor way of doing it, and what you really wanted was at least like 2 switches, or at least like each person have their own switch. So obviously the game share feature here would solve the problem of me having to buy 2 copies of the game in order to play it.
The game share, that's the thing about game shares. It does seem like it's a really quite useful kind of thing, but again, it's always going to be like, what kinds of games do they, first of all, are they kind of willing to offer it for, and then what ones are they able to do it? Because I get, obviously there's the lag kind of component with that sort of screen sharing, and if it's something like the 42 all-time classics or whatever, that was a DS game that ended up on Switch, and then they did a Switch 2 upgrade, for that early on. It's like, well, yeah, that's easy for doing kind of game share stuff on it, because it's not relying on, tight response, for the user inputs or anything like that, where lag is gonna tear it apart. Whereas, with your action games, maybe it's a little more kind of a risk of like it can't kind of maintain everything tightly enough for it to be a good experience. But as I mentioned earlier on in the episode, they just added it to Mario Tennis Fever, which I think is kind of an interesting point again, as I already mentioned, because it's like, well, would this have not, kind of helped sell the game, better when it came out in February, I think it was, if you'd already had it, or, does this reflect somehow, maybe you think it could, give a spike to sales again to add this functionality, but it's kind of difficult to penetrate awareness, this long, this many months later with something like that. So, is it just a regret, or was it more so that, because Mario Tennis is more, of a kind of action play. It's not Mario Golf, is it? You know what I mean? Like, maybe just technically they weren't there yet in terms of having, a game share through game chat version that actually, was responsive enough to feel good. I don't know. But, if they can do that, if they can extend that to games like that, then, it's, to me, it opens up quite a number of possibilities, and ones that, would be really cool. Because the fact of the matter is, while, I'm sure the ideal use case for something like what you mentioned with Marvel, Ultimate Alliance 3 is always going to be like a couch, situation. If it can run well enough to support that. For a lot of people, it's just not going to be practical, or like, just within a reasonable sort of bounds of possibility. So, being able to extend, that to, hey, if you know somebody, or use it, just might be original Switch, isn't it? And then they can just use that to kind of join in that kind of game. It could extend its appeal quite a lot, I would have thought, if you've got sufficient awareness of what this functionality is and what it can do. But I guess, that's a broader question. I don't know where that's at among, the general kind of marketplace.
Right. It used to be that, like, I did not get Ultimate Alliance 3 because not only I didn't want to buy 2 copies of the game, but I also didn't want to buy a second Switch to be able to properly play it with Karen, right? Now that we do have 2 Switches that can, now that we have the hardware to do the ad hoc, couch co-op thing, I just don't want to pay for a second copy of the game. But what's annoying is that in the years that it's come out, it came out in 2019, it went on sale apparently exactly 6 times. The last time was in June 2024, so 2 years ago. And since then, in Canada anyway, the price hasn't dropped. It actually went up $5 somewhere last year, around August. So extremely annoying. And so I'm guessing that giving this game a Switch 2 version is not a priority for Nintendo or for Tecmo Koei, who made the game. But that's the one that I'd like to see anyway.
That makes sense. It makes sense for those sorts of games because it just local multiplayer is wonderful, but especially I know people have said there's a number of things about the Switch 2 as a sort of feature set that kind of date it as being a creation of the COVID era, but even beyond that, there is still a big kind of upside to opening up those local multiplayer kind of experiences beyond that when games are pretty damn expensive at this point a lot of the time. Yep. And it's going to be a tall order necessarily to always be able to kind of get people to or you don't take it upon yourself to buy multiple copies of the same game. I sort of said it already with the Splatoon Raiders. It's kind of interesting, that doesn't have it in some ways, whereas, Mario Tennis does. I would have thought in some ways, maybe it was more doable, on a technical level, perhaps, to have Splatoon Raiders, but it may not be have that game share functionality through game chat. But it's not only a technical decision; it's a commercial decision, right? So, and again, that's about kind of projecting, what your audience likes, what they're willing and able to pay for things, and maybe you'd rather try it one way first and then see how it goes and maybe roll it out later, which is what they've done with Mario Tennis in that case. But I'm trying to think about any more sort of Switch 1 games, beyond Mario Maker that would really kind of fit the bill here. Go on,
yeah,
John.
One kind of random one that came to mind for me was maybe if you had some sort of being able to use the Switch 2 camera to play through like some of the stuff in Collection of Mana, maybe. Like there's no that was only on Switch 1, right? Like I'm just thinking like being able to play Secret of Mana co-op with somebody while you sit there and basically have chat.
To do the guys I mean, obviously they can, kind of, you could do. I mean, I've not tried it, but obviously you could do game chat while you're playing. Switch 1 games, right? But it's just a case of, if you was actually gonna bring anybody into the game, that would be new functionality, right? Which, so they would be kind of adding that to it. And that is a Square-Enix thing that they've not done as an upgrade, right? They haven't upgraded that one.
Right. Speaking of coming back around 360, right? That's one they haven't upgraded. Yeah. Yeah. I'm surprised actually that they haven't done an upgrade for that.
Well, I guess, to some extent, I guess, like Adventures of Elliot is like that somewhat in that lineage, so they've got a new game, that's trying to kind of do the top down, kind of classic action adventure thing. But obviously it's quite different from actually playing. The appeal of that collection was, I guess, obviously you had the previously unlocalized Trials of Mana in there as well. But you then also just playing the classic games. You most, again, you're kind of projecting who you think is likely to buy this, but you think a lot of it would be based on the affection that people would have for the other two games that had already been, sold in the US in particular before.
Yeah. And especially when, I haven't played any of the other games, but Secret of Mana, one of the draws of that is playing co-op, right? Couch co-op.
Exactly. And it was 3-player, right? Back in which, you would have had to have the multi-tap. You have to do that on the Super Nintendo, which I never got to play multiplayer. I had the cart back in the all those years ago, and we did a retroactive on one of the early retroactives was Secret of Mana, but I've never got the chance to play it multiplayer. So that's really is kind of the argument, right, for why these sorts of things would be cool, is that it could give you the chance to do stuff like that. Of course, Nintendo have that kind of functionality with like Switch Online, but very few Square-Enix games are ever going to make it Switch Online because they can sell them individually.
Yep. All right. Any more examples for that question? All right.
It's literally, like for some reason, Marvel Ultimate Alliance. I've been holding on to this idea that one day I'd like to play it, but it's the only one that I'll never buy it at this price, but I give me a reason to just jump on it at some point, please.
That's it's you're the Captain Ahab to its Moby Dick. Not the first time you've mentioned Marvel Ultimate Alliance. You pine for that game. Completely.
One day, I want to check it out.
Although I would say this isn't even really so much about this question. Although I'm sure you could come up with a few things, perhaps. But considering there have been more Switch 2 editions than I was perhaps expecting, at least so far, that one of the games that I find kind of quite surprising that hasn't had a full-on one is Pikmin 4. Like, it just kind of feels like that was given its sort of proximity to like the launch of the Switch. It wasn't that. It was kind of like a bit like Super Mario Bros. Wonder, right? Which has had that a pack like that, and it just kind of felt like, well, surely like that's one of those games where it's like, I'm sure it did fine on Switch 1 and they're probably like okay with its commercial performance or whatever, but there's probably also that feeling of like, well, maybe the Switch was getting a little bit, towards the sunset there, and we can get a bit more out of this if we give it some features, you take advantage of some of these type of features and kind of put it on the Switch 2 again. You can put it on shelves in a new case and sell the upgrade pack, all that kind of thing. It just seems like, I would have thought that was one of the most likely, and yet, here we are, more than a year in, and it does fit into the category that's around specified in terms of it is neither available nor announced. So, I guess it's just which of the features is most sort of apt in that case, but I think really it's just the whole game, and they've always seemed so keen to try and make Pikmin more popular that it would have received that kind of treatment.
All right, I think that wraps us up for this week.
Yeah, I
think so. Greg,
yes,
music.
Well, indeed, we had not, in fact, completely reached the end of Seren's email, because there was, in fact, a postscript from Seren that pertains to closing music, which I'm going to indulge, shall we say, because, it is the request is made with the explicit sort of acknowledgement that this is not musical perfection. Quite to the contrary, it's the diminishment of something that is at least quite a lot closer to musical perfection. Oh, no. So Seren said, I've attached a song from Fitness Boxing 3, Your Personal Trainer, the soundtrack, that is from the game's Persona 5 Royal DLC, specifically their cover of the song Life Will Change, as an example of its soundtrack, which I would best describe as St. Anger snare MIDI covers of songs you may know, which for the surely large teenager demographic among our listenership, St. Anger was an early aughts album by Metallica. So, I doubt it's controversial to say it's not their best work, but which also includes modern hits such as What Does the Fox Say and Ghostbusters. Please consider this my request to feature as ending music so the listeners can understand the madness that is this game. So, yeah, it basically it's a cheap sounding cover of Life Will Change, which, losing the vocal element of that is a shame because the vocals are very good in the Persona 5 soundtrack. But, that in itself is not that uncommon. Like, it happens right when you've got additional licensing issues with using people's vocals. Like in Smash Brothers, you get the non-vocal version of the Bayonetta themes, from 1 and 2, where the sax takes over the vocal. And yeah, I guess it's still kind of diminished, but it's fine. Whereas, more debatable in this case.
Fair enough. All right, so some administrative stuff. Keep playing Sonic Mania. We have that retroactive coming up. And as always, send emails to rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. That is rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. And that is going to wrap us this week. So thanks for listening, everybody, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Later.
Bye-bye.